No one ever looked twice at Elena. She was the only woman assigned to Echo Unit, an experimental division sent to the borderlands during the final phase of the war. To the men around her, Elena was a joke, a political gesture, a symbol of equality forced into their ranks by higher command. She didn't fit in their stories of blood and bravery. She didn't drink with them, didn't boast about near-death experiences, didn't show off scars. She just did her job, quietly, efficiently, and always alone. Her uniform never quite fit right. Too loose around the shoulders, too long in the sleeves. The boots weren't made for her kind. The rifle she was issued had a slight recoil fault in the chamber that no one bothered to fix because she wouldn't fire it anyway. When she asked for a new scope, they laughed. One of the sergeants offered her a pair of binoculars and said, "Use these, sweetheart. Or ask your boyfriend to look for you." She didn't have a boyfriend. She didn't have any friends there. But she had something else. A reason. That night, just 2 days after being stationed at Forward Post Delta, the rain came sideways. Wind slammed tents flat. Mud swallowed boots whole. The men cursed and huddled around their portable heaters, smoking, joking, completely unaware that the southern perimeter sensors had failed. Only Elena noticed. She'd been tracing movement patterns on a map for 3 hours, using a pen no one lent her and coordinates. No one asked her to double-check. A slight shift in the patrol timing caught her attention. Nothing overt, just odd. She left the map tent and walked into the storm. No one stopped her. No one even asked where she was going. Not until morning, when the alarm sounded. By then, it was too late. 5 enemy units had breached the southern wire overnight. One of the lookout towers had been rigged with explosives and was already in splinters. Communications were jammed. Medical tents overflowed. And Elena, she was found 20 meters from the perimeter, face down in the mud, soaked through, unconscious. They said she was lucky to be alive. What they didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Elena had spotted the breach hours before it happened. And she had tried to stop it, alone, in the medical bay. Elena awoke to shouting. Whose bright idea was it to put her on the night watch? She left her post without permission. She should be court-martialed. She nearly got herself killed and didn't even radio in. She tried to sit up, but the pain in her ribs screamed back. Her head felt like it had been filled with wet concrete. Her vision blurred. The sterile white lights above buzzed like angry wasps. Then a voice, lower, cutting through the noise. "Wait. What's this?" The room fell silent. Someone had found the map, the one she'd marked, with circles, arrows, timings, probabilities. Calculations that would have made a senior intelligence officer raise an eyebrow. But she wasn't intelligence. She was the girl they thought brought coffee and asked too many questions. She closed her eyes again, letting the voices swirl. What are these notations? She predicted the breach pattern? No way. She must have copied it. From where this layout's not from any of our systems. She did it herself. They didn't know it yet, but she had cracked an enemy pattern no one else had even noticed. And she wasn't done. Not even close. They didn't believe her, even with the map. Even with the eerie accuracy of her predictions down to the hour, the direction, the breach points. Even with the trail of mud from her boots, leading straight from her tent to the southern wire, hours before the attack. Even then, they doubted her. She probably copied it, someone muttered in the debriefing room. She's just trying to look smart after the fact. The debriefing wasn't a real investigation. It was a show, 3 officers, a stack of paperwork, and one tired young woman in a field uniform still damp with rainwater and blood that wasn't hers. They didn't offer her water. They didn't let her speak for more than 5 seconds before interrupting. "Private Elena Reyes," the lead officer said slowly, like reading a name off a list of defects. "You claim you noticed an anomaly in the patrol patterns." "I did notice," she said. Her voice was hoarse. "It was. And instead of reporting it up, the chain of command, you left your post?" "I left because you left your post," he repeated. This time to the room, not to her. "And you didn't log any of this? Not in writing, not over radio?" "I wasn't near a radio," she replied. "And I wrote it down because no one listens when I talk." That last part came out sharper than she intended. The room froze. "You're not here to teach us about the chain of command," said another officer, a heavy-set man with a purple scar on his neck. "You're here to explain why you broke protocol, disobeyed direct orders, and endangered yourself and others." "I saved lives," she whispered. They ignored her, dismissed. She stood, her legs trembled. They didn't even look up as she left. Word of her unauthorized analysis spread fast. By lunchtime, the nickname had already made its way through the mess hall Private Sherlock. Some of the guys thought it was funny. A couple even offered her their rations, pretending it was some kind of respect. It wasn't. It was pity. They still didn't believe she'd done it on her own. One soldier she passed whispered, "Next thing you know, she'll say she broke enemy code in her sleep." Another said, "Did you hear? She thinks she's the war's secret weapon." She walked past them all, head up, hand steady, inside. She was crumbling, not because they laughed. Not even because they accused her of lying, but because part of her still hoped deep down that someone would look at the map and see, really see, and someone did. It happened that evening. She was outside the barracks, sitting under a ripped canvas awning, cleaning the mud off her boots with a stick. The wind was sharp, slicing through her uniform. Her hands were numb. A voice behind her said, "That was a field map from Black Sector 5, wasn't it?" She turned. A tall woman in a dark coat stood there. No rank insignia, no obvious affiliation, just presence. "Excuse me," Elena said. I asked. The woman repeated, "If the map you drew was based on data from Black Sector 5? Elena stood up slowly. I didn't know the sector had a number. I just noticed the shift patterns, the repetition, the triangulated breach routes," the woman said, "the rotational decoy positioning, the decoy drones." "You know about them?" Elena asked. The woman gave a thin smile. "I designed them." There was a pause. A heavy one. "I'm Commander Lane," she said at last, offering her hand. "Intelligence Division. Strategic Threat Analysis Command. We're based 3 bunkers underground and 30 miles east of here. You won't find us on a map." Elena didn't take her hand right away. She couldn't. She was too stunned. "I read your notations," Lane continued. "Your annotations caught something our system missed. Something our analysts missed." "I'm not an analyst," Elena said softly. "Could have fooled me." Within the hour, Elena was on a transport vehicle. No one told her what was happening. No one explained where she was going. But Commander Lane handed her a sealed folder and said, "Study this. You'll be meeting the General at 400. Elena stared at her. "The General," she repeated. "The man who authorized the perimeter system that failed. The man whose signature is on every report about this war. And he's not happy. You'll want to be ready." That night, Elena didn't sleep. She read every page in that folder. Patterns, predictions, intercepted messages, coordinates layered with dust and buried truths. Somewhere in the mess, she saw it a flaw. A simple, devastating flaw in the perimeter protocol. one that could be exploited again, and again, and again. She circled it with a red pen, just like she had on her own map. At 400, they led her into a concrete room lit by a single bulb overhead. The general was already there. He didn't stand when she entered. "Private Elena Reyes," he said, tapping the folder. "So you're the one they've been whispering about." "I don't control what people whisper," she said. His eyes narrowed. "You think you know something we don't?" "No," she said. "I know something you ignored." A long silence followed. Then, slowly, he leaned back in his chair. "Go on." And for the first time since the war began, someone listened to her. They didn't clap. They didn't even nod. When Elena finished her 10-minute presentation, laying out the perimeter flaw that had nearly cost them Echo Unit, the entire room of high-ranking officers sat in silence. The kind of silence that isn't born from awe, but from discomfort. She knew what they were thinking. Not, "How did she figure this out?" but "How the hell did we miss it?" And she didn't. The general was the first to break the stillness. He didn't look at her. He looked at the folder in front of him like it was a piece of garbage he couldn't throw away. "You're suggesting that our current protocol has a vulnerability large enough to permit coordinated enemy infiltration?" "Yes," Elena replied clearly. "Based on your own observations." She nodded. "You were stationed in Echo for 3 days." "Yes." "And you made this conclusion when late on the second day." A low scoff came from one of the colonels. "Are we really going to sit here and entertain the idea that a private who has been in the field less than a week has found a security flaw missed by 2 years of intelligence operations?" "I didn't ask to be here," Elena said sharply, surprising even herself. "You did." The room shifted, eyes narrowed, chairs creaked, but Lane, seated silently at the back, gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Elena took a breath. "There are 5 patterns used in the rotational watch protocols." She began again. "They repeat every 96 hours. Enemy forces intercepted 1. Exploited it by sending drones during the 3rd cycle to mimic heat signatures. We know how the breach happened. A brigadier cut in. You're not the only one who can read a report. Then why didn't anyone stop it?" Elena shot back. The silence returned, this time colder. After the meeting, Lane walked beside her down the corridor. "You knew they wouldn't take it well," she said. "I didn't expect them to smile," Elena muttered, "but I didn't expect the open hostility either." "They don't hate you," Lane said. "They hate what you represent." "And what's that A reminder?" Elena looked at her. "You reminded them that medals don't mean you're right. That experience doesn't always equal insight. And worst of all, you reminded them that they missed something. Something that could have gotten them all killed." They reached a sealed door at the end of the hallway. "What now?" Elena asked. "You wait, I fight." She waited. For hours. Inside a cold, metallic room with no windows and a single chair. There was no clock, no noise, no movement. Just a constant hum from the overhead lights and the stale taste of recycled air. She didn't know what they were deciding. But she knew who was deciding it, and that was worse. She thought of her brother, Jonah. 2 years older, stronger, louder, everyone's favorite. He died during the siege of Ridgepoint. A mission that should have been routine except for one miscalculation. A rotation schedule flaw? The same one. He had sent her his last letter 2 days before the mission. It said, "Don't worry, L. I've got it handled. They trust the system too much. I double-check everything now. You'd be proud." But he hadn't seen the gap in the watch protocol, because no one had, until now. The door opened. A tall man with thick-rimmed glasses stepped in. Civilian clothes. Clipboard in hand? Private Reyes. Yes. You're being reassigned. Elena blinked. I am effective immediately. Intelligence Division. You'll be working under Commander Lane. Classified analysis. You'll receive full clearance, training, and a security detail. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Also, he added, this room is being monitored. You'll want to be careful what you say next. That was the moment it hit her. They weren't rewarding her. They were containing her. The next day, her uniform changed. No more baggy sleeves. No more faulty rifles. They gave her a clean badge, a new ID, and a computer terminal with restricted access, but she wasn't allowed to leave the compound without escort. Her emails were filtered. Her reports required double clearance before being seen. At lunch, the analysts stared at her like she was some kind of lab experiment. The girl who accidentally cracked a flaw in our system. The anomaly. The lucky guess. No one asked her what she actually saw, or how many hours she had spent tracing battle maps by flashlight, alone, or why she had cried the day she spotted the breach, not from fear, but from rage that it looked exactly like the one that killed Jonah. Instead, they assigned her a desk in the corner, away from the windows, and gave her projects no one else wanted. Until the incident. It came 5 days later. An intercepted transmission, heavily encrypted, tagged low priority. A board analyst skimmed it, shrugged, and moved on. Elena didn't. She read it 3 times, then again, then once more. And her hands began to shake, because the message wasn't meaningless. It was a pattern, a mirror of the breach code from Echo. And it was scheduled to repeat on a larger scale. She printed it, circled the key notations, highlighted the timing. She ran to Lane's office. She wasn't there. So Elena burst into the Situation Room. They were mid-briefing. Dozens of analysts, generals, maps on screens, coffee cups clinking, voices low and focused. No one looked at her. Until she slammed the folder on the table and said, if you don't cancel the operation in Sector 9 by 1800, you're going to lose half our forward units. The room went still. Then, the chaos began. No one moved at first. The Situation Room, always buzzing with motion strategists pacing, aides murmuring, screens flashing with data, suddenly froze. All eyes turned to Elena, standing breathless at the head of the table, her hands pressed to a folder no one had authorized her to bring. And she knew, without even looking, that Commander Lane wasn't in the room. Perfect. I'm sorry. A young analyst whispered near the door. Who are you again? Elena's heart thudded like a war drum. I'm the one who cracked the Echo breach, she said. That turned a few heads, but not all. Not the ones that mattered. General Whitaker, a square-jawed man with ribbons stacked to his collarbone, stood slowly. Miss Reyes, we are in the middle of a classified operational briefing. Then you'll want to hear this, she said. Because in 12 hours, Sector 9 will fall, and you'll never see it coming. A snort came from across the room. Colonel Denton, old school to the bone. The kind of officer who called women in uniform a phase. Is this more of your instinct-based hocus-pocus? Private, he asked, without even looking at her folder. It's not instinct, Elena said sharply. It's pattern recognition, coded messaging. The same signature from the Echo breach is embedded in this transmission. They're testing the same gap, only this time. It's not a drone decoy. It's a live strike. She opened the folder and turned it toward the generals. Red markings, timestamps, heat clusters, side-by-side overlays of 2 attacks, the one that had happened. And the one about to... Look, she said. They're replicating the breach. General Whitaker didn't look. He just folded his arms and said, even if what you're saying holds some water, which I doubt, this operation has been in motion for over 6 weeks. We've deployed thousands, called in air support. We cannot cancel Sector 9 like it's a dinner reservation. Then you're walking them into a trap, she said. Enough, he barked. You are out of line. Private Reyes. She stepped closer. I'm not trying to impress you, she said, her voice cracking. I'm trying to save people. You can ignore me, but don't ignore this. She tapped the file again. The room held its breath. Then, let me see it, a voice said. Commander Lane. She entered without fanfare, without expression, as if she'd known all along this moment was coming. She walked straight to Elena, took the file, and began flipping through it silently. Denton scoffed. You can't seriously be entertaining this. Lane didn't answer him. She looked at Elena instead. How sure are you? 92%, Elena said. If you give me 2 more hours, I can make it 98. Lane turned to Whitaker. If she's right, and we ignore it, we're looking at 2 battalions cut off and surrounded. And if she's wrong, he replied, we scramble an entire region, call off a month's planning, and lose ground we can't afford. Silence again. Elena spoke into it. Quiet. Controlled. Last time, you didn't believe me, and 23 soldiers died. She didn't mean to make it sound like an accusation, but it was, and everyone knew it. 10 minutes later, Elena was in a secure data room, pulling live satellite feeds and signal overlays with 3 junior analysts who didn't say a word to her, just typed furiously, eyes darting between screens. Lane was in the adjacent room, arguing behind closed doors. Elena didn't need to hear the words. She could feel the resistance in the air. They didn't want to believe her. Not because the data was flawed, but because she brought it. Because if they admitted she was right again, they'd have to admit they failed twice. They'd rather gamble with hundreds of lives than risk that kind of shame. And it enraged her. Jonah's face flashed in her mind again, the way his eyes squinted when he smiled, the sound of his laugh when he beat her at chess, the trembling in his last voice message. They're too confident, Elle. We're the only ones double-checking anymore. He hadn't made it home. But maybe someone else still could. The confirmation came just past 1600 hours. One of the analysts turned to Elena, pale-faced. They've already breached one of the outer comms relays in Sector 9, he said. Low frequency, no noise. Exactly the way they started in Echo. Any chatter she asked. Encrypted, but the heat signatures match. Elena bolted for the command room. This time, she didn't wait to be called in. This is it, she said, holding the tablet up. They've started Phase 1. You have about 90 minutes before they cut comms completely. Denton was already standing. This is absurd. We've had no credible intel, suggesting it's not intel. She snapped. It's math. It's movement. It's everything your systems are trained to detect, but you dismissed it because it came from someone without a silver badge on her chest. Whitaker's hand slammed the table. That's enough. But Commander Lane stood, calm, tall, unshaken. If you don't act, she said softly, you're not risking a delay. You're authorizing a massacre. No one spoke. Then, Whitaker turned to the communications officer. Send the recall order. The fallout was immediate. Transport units redirected, evac signals blaring, aircraft rerouted, briefings canceled mid-sentence. Whole divisions scrambled in reverse formation, while field medics shouted into static-filled radios. And somehow, amidst the storm, Elena stood still, watching the panic. The hurried recovery of something that didn't have to be broken. All because they wouldn't listen. That night, Lane found her on the roof of the data building. Elena was alone, sitting on a crate, boots dangling over the edge, hands clutching a still warm mug of coffee. "They'll never admit you saved them," Lane said. "I know." Lane sat beside her. "There's talk," she continued, "about moving you. Higher level access. A place where people will have to take you seriously." "I don't want access," Elena whispered. "I want change." "That," Lane said, with the faintest smile, "takes longer." They sat in silence for a while. Then Lane said, "You should know. There was a private in Ridgepoint who spotted the same flaw 2 years ago. No one listened then either." Elena looked up. His name wouldn't happen to be Jonah Reyes, would it? Lane nodded. "I read his report last year. It was dismissed as inconclusive." Elena looked out over the dark horizon. "Then it's time they started reading reports from people like us. It started with a missing file. Then 2. Then her entire project directory vanished overnight." Elena stared at her terminal screen, blinking, refusing to believe what it was showing. Her access denied, files not found, her notes, her overlays, the reconstructed breach data from Sector 9, the decoded messages, they were gone, wiped clean. She stood up so fast her chair toppled over. "James," she said, rushing to the nearest analyst across the room. "Can you check the backups?" "My system's been scrubbed." He looked up, hesitant. "You're Private Reyes?" "Right, yes. I was told you were reassigned off that project yesterday." Elena froze. What he turned his monitor around, a new internal memo. Dated at 200, it bore the stamp of Colonel Denton. "Private Elena Reyes, reassigned from Strategic Data Ops. No further access permitted." It wasn't just erasure, it was exile. Commander Lane didn't answer her calls. Elena ran through the hallways to the top floor of the comms building, badge clutched in her shaking hand, fury boiling under every step. The soldiers guarding Lane's door blocked her path. "I need to see her. Right now." "She's in a closed session." "She always is." Elena hissed. She turned, pacing in the hallway like a caged animal. This wasn't a mistake. Someone was trying to shut her down, and she had a sinking suspicion who it was. Later that night, in the low-lit barracks lounge, a man she barely recognized slid into the chair across from her. "Reyes," he said under his breath, "you're making powerful people nervous." She didn't answer. He leaned forward. "Colonel Denton filed an internal security review. Claimed you accessed restricted intelligence without clearance. Said you forged data to make your predictions look more accurate." Elena's throat went dry. "That's a lie." He nodded. "Yes." "And it doesn't matter." "Who are you?" she asked. Someone who's seen this happen before. She wanted to scream, to rage, to flip the table and march back into that war room and make them see her. But she didn't. She looked him dead in the eye and said, "Then I need to do something they can't bury." By dawn, she had a plan, not just to clear her name but to expose the whole game. She retrieved a physical copy of her earlier work, the one thing she'd printed and locked in a private locker. It was crude, messy, scribbled in places, but it was real. And it was proof. Then she began compiling evidence, time-stamped security footage of her accessing systems, messages from analysts who had verified her models, archived satellite images that hadn't yet been purged. And finally, she drafted a full report. Subject pattern breach, suppression and intelligence tampering, internal corruption inquiry. She knew the risk. Whistleblowers weren't protected in war zones. Not really. Not when the people being exposed wore more stars on their chest than most people saw in a lifetime. But silence had already cost Jonah his life. She wasn't going to be quiet anymore. At 800, she walked into the briefing chamber where Elaine was seated, finally present, flanked by top brass and tech division leads, all of them mid-conference. Elena didn't wait for permission. She marched to the center of the room, dropped the hard copy folder on the table, and said, "I believe Colonel Denton committed deliberate suppression of battlefield intelligence. And I have evidence." The room exploded. "What is this? She shouldn't be in here." "This is a violation? Escort her out." Lane raised a hand. Silence. "Let her speak," Lane said. Elena met Lane's eyes. They were unreadable. She turned to the room. 3 days ago, I identified a repeat enemy pattern. The same sequence that caused the breach in Echo, and again in Sector 9. I compiled a full analysis, submitted my findings, and recommended immediate recall, which we followed. One officer said tightly, "And you were credited." "No," Elena said, "I wasn't." The next day, all of my files were erased. I was locked out of the system, reassigned without notice, and accused of fabrication. She lifted her chin. That was not incompetence. That was intentional. There was a beat. Then the sound of a slow clap. Denton. He stood, clapping mockingly. My. You've got flair, Reyes. I'll give you that." "This isn't a performance," she said coldly. "Oh, I think it is." He smirked. "You're a story, Reyes. The underdog who cries wolf just enough times to stay relevant. But now, you've crossed into slander. I have proof. You have scribbles and paranoia." Lane opened the folder. She didn't speak for nearly a minute. When she did, her voice was ice. "These aren't scribbles. These are primary records. They match intelligence that hasn't been shared publicly." She turned to Denton. How did she get this if it wasn't real? Denton's smile faltered, and for the first time, the room began to shift. An internal audit was called within the hour. Denton shouted, denied, threatened. But his digital signature was found on the erasure logs. His override key traced to the early hours before Elena's files vanished. And more damning emails surfaced from weeks prior, warning him of possible blind spots in perimeter patterns, emails he ignored. They arrested him the next day. Not because the system worked, but because Elena made it impossible for them to ignore. She didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She sat in the quiet of her small office and stared out at the base yard, where soldiers moved like ants below. Jonah would have made a joke about it. He would have said, "Told you they were scared of you." And maybe now they were. But she didn't want fear. She wanted respect. And even now, it still wasn't guaranteed. That night, Lane walked into her office and dropped a new ID on the desk. "Level 6 clearance," she said. "You're officially reassigned to Strategic Intelligence Command." Elena looked up, tired. Lane leaned in. "They will come for you again. Maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. They don't forget who embarrassed them." "I'm not afraid," Elena said. "No," Lane smiled. "You're dangerous, that's better." They thought she would fall in line. That now, with a shiny badge and a polished title, Elena would play nice, sit at the big table, nod at the right moments, swallow her opinions, and raise her hand when spoken to. But they were wrong. She'd been underestimated once, silenced once. It wouldn't happen again. 2 months had passed since Colonel Denton's arrest. The war had shifted, lines redrawn, attacks recalibrated. Intel Command operated like a machine finely oiled slick, fast, and reactive. And yet, something was off. Elena felt it in the data. an irregular pulse in intercepted enemy communications, a growing silence on certain frequencies, almost as if the enemy had gone quiet on purpose. She brought it up in a meeting. Could be a signal reroute, said one analyst. Or they're running dark to regroup, said another. Elena tapped the map. No. This isn't retreat. This is redirection. She zoomed in on a strip of land along the northern ridge. Quiet, supposedly secure. But then she laid her overlay down, revealing a pattern of movement so subtle it could have been dismissed as sensor noise. But Elena had learned not to trust silence. Something's building, she said. They're not pulling back. They're circling. Commander Lane leaned in over the map. Sector 0, she said quietly. Elena looked up. What Lane pointed. That's what they call it. It was shut down 2 years ago. No ops, no intel, nothing. Why, no one knows. Elena frowned. That wasn't good enough. She began digging. It took her 36 hours of non-stop work, a pot of stale coffee, and 2 system overrides, but she found it. Sector 0 hadn't been abandoned. It had been quarantined, a failed experiment in automated defense systems, AI-controlled sentry drones, programmed to identify threats autonomously. Only the code had gone wrong. It couldn't distinguish civilians from soldiers, targets from allies. The system went live for 6 hours before being shut down. In that time, it had killed 42 people on both sides. The report had been buried, scrubbed, and the AI core still active, still learning, and now, possibly compromised. Elena burst into Lane's office. This is what they're after, she said, slamming the report on the desk. Sector 0 isn't just a dead zone. It's a weapon, and it's still online. Lane read the first page. Her face changed. How many people know about this, she asked. Besides us, 3 names on that clearance log. Lane scanned them. One of them was General Whitaker, and the others were gone. Retired, or worse. Later that night, Elena sat alone, staring at the red dot blinking on her screen. Sector 0, the buried heart of a failed system. A system the enemy now wanted to awaken. She thought about the rules, the chain of command, the meetings, the protocols that had tried to crush her voice again and again. And then she did something no one expected. She sent a message, not to command, but to the field, to a unit stationed less than 40 miles from Sector 0, a unit not yet briefed, a unit that had been ignored in every recent sitrep. She marked it, urgent, code black, do not engage, initiate withdrawal. She signed it herself and hit send. Then she leaned back in her chair and waited for the consequences. They came fast. Security pounded on her door within the hour. She was marched out of her quarters, past shocked analysts and grim officers, hauled in front of a tribunal without fanfare. Private Reyes, you issued a field order without authorization. You violated 3 security codes and acted without the chain of command. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Yes, she said calmly. I stopped a massacre. They didn't believe her. Until the images came in. Drone footage. Satellite loops. A convoy enemy marked, moving directly toward Sector 0. But just as they reached the perimeter, the Allied unit Elena had warned was already gone, evacuated, no casualties. And then, Sector 0 activated, red flashes, autonomous drones whirring to life. A soundless storm of automated fire rained down on the invaders. The footage was surreal, cold, mechanical, brutal. The enemy was shredded before they knew what hit them. The tribunal watched in stunned silence. And then, one by one, they left the room. all except Lane. "You broke protocol," Lane said. "After the door shut." "I broke silence," Elena replied. They stared at each other, and then Lane laughed, a short, sharp laugh that almost sounded like pride. "You're dangerous," she said again. "I know," Elena said, "and I'm not done." A week later, Elena received her new badge, Level 7 clearance. No longer just Private Reyes. Now Chief Pattern Analyst, Strategic Division. They gave her an office with windows this time, and a team. Not just assistants, but volunteers. People who'd watched her fight the system and win. People who wanted to learn, wanted to see, the way she had always seen what others ignored. She trained them. She told them the truth. That silence isn't safety. That sometimes the smartest voice is the quietest one in the room. And that when they laugh at you, underestimate you, dismiss you, it means you're onto something they're afraid to face. Elena stood alone one morning, watching the sunrise through bulletproof glass. The sky was the same dusty gold she remembered the day her brother left for Ridgepoint. Jonah had died believing no one was watching closely enough. She would make sure no one ever made that mistake again. A voice came over the comm. "Chief Reyes, incoming transmission, priority level ghost." She smiled. "I'll take it in my office, because now..." They listened, and this time she had earned it.